Disney, we need to have a word. I declared Disney Fridays to be a thing. Then you start dropping Loki episodes on Wednesdays. Okay, fine. He's the god of mischief after all, so I let it slide. But then this week, you taking this thing a step further and announce that all Disney Plus shows for Star Wars and Marvel will have Wednesday releases. Disney Plus Wednesday, that doesn't have the same ring to it, man. And you make me look bad. So I guess it's time I take out the old melt stick. Hello and welcome to the Review of Champions. We are talking today about Loki episode 2. And we have our regular panel here, actually. We have from Florida, Mr. Art Stanton, Mr. Taylor first, Shadowbiz, and voice only, but we wouldn't want to miss him, Mr. Lord Deathman. Before we start talking about this episode, I would like to invite you all to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. And if you are willing, you can join us on Sakar. You can find our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. And yeah, we would love to have you there. So you're cordially invited. And now we're going to talk about this episode, and we're going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode and you don't want to get spoiled, then watch it first and then come back to this video. Okay. Well, let's start. Shadowbiz, what did you think about the episode?
Well, yeah, personally, I thought it was much better this time around. You definitely got to see more of the Loki type character. That's what I wanted straight away. But of course, the pilot has to introduce things. So yeah, I love this episode. It did take a little while to get there. They did like the whole research and in that episode, and then eventually got to the point where we got to meet the other Loki for the first time, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it was a great episode. Finally, thank you, Marvel.
So you didn't think it was a bit slow and boring?
A little bit, but it was bearable because of like towards the end, it was like it peaked. Yeah.
Okay, Lord Deathman, what do you make of this episode?
The variant. You know, I saw a little bit of this as a part of the early screeners. I got a chance to see just a portion of this episode, and I have to say I was like confused. I was like, what is happening on this show? But then getting to see it, you know, in the normal schedule with everybody else and putting the pieces together, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. And I was surprised to find how engaged I am by the writing, which is super smart, as Mobius would say. But I mean that literally. It's. I think the dynamic spoken between Loki and Mobius and all of the other characters really is carrying a very interesting and engaging story. I was really less engaged by the action at the Renaissance Fair, which I'd seen that little clip of, and I heard We Need a Hero song, and I was like, okay, they're leaning a bit here on nostalgia, and there was some comedy beats there. But I was really pleasantly surprised to find that the story-wise, I was like, wow, this is a fairly deep mystery. It doesn't have anything on it because I don't think, much like the two series that came before, you're not pulling from a specific place in the source. They're getting to be a bit more inventive. And they're surprising folks like me who, you know, kind of bury their heads in the floppies and kind of know the ins and outs of the characters. So, yeah, I give high marks to this episode, and I'm really, really fascinated to see more. Some high notes for me on this episode was really the end at the Rocks Cart, that whole sequence where Loki meets who we think is another Loki. There's some other wild theories out there in terms of who that person might be.
We will get to that later.
Indeed,
you guys all
I
stole
won't.
my thunder on the board, by the way.
I won't spoil that too much. But I enjoyed that whole Rocks cart sequence from an action point of view, and just getting to hear a little bit more of this other Loki's perspective and sort of the unfolding of this person's plan. Yeah, I can't wait for the next episode. The only low marks I would give this episode is that while I didn't mind all the talking, which some of the other fans seemed to mind a lot, there was a really clumsy metaphor involving a salad, and Loki even notes that it's pretty clumsy. But I was like, wow, this is like, not only is it clumsy, it's kind of nonsensical. We have salt and pepper, and then he's pouring a juice box into a salad to try and get that point across. And I was like, the first episode did such a good job of reducing these esoteric, complex ideas in comic book lore down to very simplistic levels that, you know, general audiences could you know, understand. But in this newer episode, I felt like there was a bit of a fall down on the salad, and I was like, oh, that's a little cringy there. I thought the Renaissance Fair stuff, while entertaining, I didn't think it was the strongest action scene I'd ever seen. And the fair itself, in terms of the setting, seemed a bit on the nose in terms of trying to make it Asgardian, but, you know, like not quite as Asgardian. So yeah, but overall, I thought the episode was really great, and I'm looking forward to more.
Yeah, it did get a little bit like Oliver Hardy type stuff with that salad, but yeah, well, it was a bit slapstick to me. But anyway, Taylor, what did you think?
I think this was a great episode. I think it did a great job of closing out Act 1 of this, whatever, 4.5 hour movie, which is what this actually appears to be. Did a great job of setting the stage, and my favorite part of it was the fact that you know, Loki did not suddenly become a hero by being brought into the TVA to help stop this guy. Loki is still very much a villain. His goal, he made clear, or at least he wants it to be made clear, that his goal is to take over the TVA and become the most powerful being in the universe, which is kind of his thing, at least as of 2012 Loki, which is who we're dealing with here. So I think they did a great job there. Some people were complaining that he became a good guy too fast. Well, no, he's not. He's still Loki. And then the introduction of the other Loki variant, as well as the explanation that there have been many Loki variants, and how we even saw little glimpses of some of them, courteous of Mobius. So all in all, yeah, it was a great episode. I liked all of it. I didn't think it dragged at all because I'm old and I like story and conversation sometimes to actually develop a plot. You know,
Right.
like I said, Act 1 is over. I think it's going to take off like a rocket in the next episode, and so far it's going great.
Yeah, I especially enjoyed the jab at Lance Armstrong, Loki as winner of the Tour de France, the god of mischief, and, well, we know what happened with Lance. But anyway, he's also from Texas, by the way. Arch?
Yeah, I was into the whole thing. I feel like I could say a lot about it, but basically the episode really built in a good way for me. Like, I love the Ren Fair just because I've been to a couple of them. I'm not like a super Ren Fair person, but I've gone to a couple of them and seen them hanging around, so I thought it was kind of cute. But more importantly, I think that they did two key things there. They really established I'm going to call her Randy because that's what she calls herself. They established Randy's like mind control power there, and they also established that she had stolen the door, the ability to open up the time doors there, which obviously played in later in the episode. So I thought they did a great job of using that scene to build where the show was going. But I was into every conversation, much like Taylor here. Like, I thought there were a lot of like really meaty sort of conversations, like the one about the jet skis when you're getting into Mobius's like sort of desire to have some sort of real life, even if he's committed to what he's doing. He's still kind of longing for some other kind of freedom, which I thought was great. I absolutely loved Loki figuring out and not his explanation necessarily, but just the concept of figuring out that you could do anything you want in an apocalypse. It doesn't matter. Everything's getting wiped out. It doesn't matter what you do. Who cares? I just thought it was great. I love the whole sequence when they actually go to Pompeii and he's just like, it doesn't matter. There are no consequences. He's just screaming this out in the middle of the street. I thought it was a great scene. But really, like, the scene that really got me was like towards the end when they finally get into the rocks cart and the lady he's with, I can't remember her name, but the TVA guard lady suddenly gets possessed by the other guy. There's that moment of recognition where Loki knows he's talking to the person. It was really horrific just watching him walk around and the lights are flickering, and it was really dark and creepy and sinister, and I love that whole sequence. So And then, of course, like by the time they got to where all the doors are falling through and the bombs are going off and stuff like that, that was just excellent stuff. But a lot of really good stuff in this one. I thought. One more thing I'd wanted to add: was Ravana Renslayer. I might be getting her name slightly wrong there, but the way her and Mobius's conversation about the Time Lords, where you realize Mobius has never seen them, and that she supposedly has contact with them, but that really feels suspicious, to say the least, to me. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that really stood out to me, that he'd never met them, and she's supposedly gatekeeping these people, so curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, that actually was my favorite part of this episode. That specific conversation. To be honest, where episode 1 was a solid setup for me, episode 2 actually I was not a big fan of it, and for now I rate. It is not my favorite Disney Plus Marvel show, I should say. Sometimes that happens. I thought it was a bit boring, a bit too talkative, and there was not much. They tried to make it interesting, but to me, it fell a bit flat. But that's just a personal feeling. I'm sorry if I stepped on any toes here.
If nobody, I don't know if anybody else caught this, but my wife actually threw out like an interesting observation. I don't know what anybody thinks about it or even what I think about it, but she sort of tied the idea of the Miss Minute sequence where he's like batting her away on the desk, and I thought that was just a fun little sequence, by the way. By the way, you should check out what was actually written on the screen, the test that he's going for. There's some interesting answers on there, but the Miss Minute's being able to project herself into reality in some sort of way, and feeling like you could hear her feet like patting, like as she bops around. But then what she tied that into was the librarian. Not sure if there's anything here or not, but she just described the librarian as acting extremely robotic and perhaps not even real. And the way she got there was talking about Loki coming up, saying hello to her, but she doesn't respond to that. She responds to the bell, almost as if she's programmed to respond to only the bell or something. It was, she was just very robotic in that way. So I just thought that was an interesting tie together, especially since Loki mentioned in episode 1 that all the TVA agents are clowns and that this isn't real himself. Not sure if that's going anywhere, but I did think it was an interesting observation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just thought it was like they were just making fun of like bureaucracy. That's what I thought of it. But yeah, what I think is, I guess, important. It's worth mentioning that I remember how Loki and Mobius had that discussion about he's questioning the TVA, like why did it exist, and he even tried to do some research on the origins of the TVA, but he didn't get access to that, obviously, because of obvious reasons anyway. But the thing is, it is interesting where that discussion went, because they were saying in the first episode, like with the videos, like everything's predetermined, but the TVA is obviously outside that whole predetermined destiny. So I thought that was that's worth mentioning, because how does that work exactly? If everything's has its destiny, then how does the TVA exist?
Oh, yeah, that's a very deep question. I don't know if we can cover that one in half an hour.
Yeah.
But what I personally liked about that sequence is when Loki was reading about the destruction of Asgard. You see the close-up of his eyes; they're welling up a little bit, and then later when he does his cringy salad metaphor, he talks over it like it's nothing to him. Well, we know better. I think deep down Loki is a very conflicted and emotional being. As long as nobody has to add anything, then I will just move to our rating section.
Well, actually, before you do, I'm a huge fan of world building in these series, and I really like the idea that they were discussing apocalypses. They were sitting down and kind of talking about the climate disaster event and all these kinds of things that were happening in the future on the timeline. And I also liked I loved it actually when Loki was talking to the rest of the TVA about explicitly explaining what his powers do in terms of his duplication. And they were talking about, different Lokis have different abilities, right? But thematically, all of their abilities are around guile and trickery, right? So moving from body to body, projecting duplicates of yourself. So I love the way they kind of really thought that out as far as explaining what variants are, especially in the context of Loki. And it makes sense when you actually finally meet this other Loki or this, unknown or unidentified individual at the end of the episode, because her possession powers are kind of like a sinister sister to Loki's ability to duplicate himself and project these molecularly exact copies of himself across various distances. So, I really enjoyed that. And they're doing a great job in this series, just in general, again, with conveying the complex ideas around the multiverse. And I was like, maybe this doesn't work because they're saying that there's a sacred timeline, but we've been made to understand prior to this that there's a multiverse in terms of the Ancient One's explanations in Endgame kind of differ from this, but maybe there is one particular timeline in all of the multiverse that the TVA is sort of declaring sacred in terms of a resolution at either the end or beginning of that timeline that works for them. And the rest of them are like not sacred, and they go around and start pruning those so that they don't have any impact on the one that they would like to preserve. So their agenda, again, the episodes, even when they're not action heavy and they're talking conversation, the world building that they're doing is really spectacular. And I really can't wait to see the guy, the head writer on this show, when he continues on with Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. That I think that movie's going to really sing from a writing perspective, because this guy gets how to bring those ideas into live action.
I don't think it's a coincidence this show and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness have the same writer attached to it, because it's obvious that this show is going to create that Multiverse of Madness if it hasn't been created at the end of this episode already. Taylor, it's time for ratings, so I'm going to go to you first. How do you rate this episode?
So far, I've had no problems with the show at all, so this is another 10 out of 10 episode.
That's high praise. Very high praise. Arch?
Yeah, this is kind of the show I want. I think it's like more personal than I thought it would be with most of the characters. I love the bizarre like sci-fi nature to it. I love the like sinister nature to it. I love all of that. I'm into like every single conversation they have. So not having the action is fine to me as long as like you have this deep sort of relevant story happening. So I think that's great. But for this particular episode, I will rate it 0 consequences. I think that's appropriate.
I can live with that. Biz?
I give it an 8 out of 10 this time. I liked it much more. You definitely got to see like more of the Loki character, so that was good. And then I agree with Arch with what he was saying before. When they got into the Rocks card, it was definitely had a horror-esque vibe to it. That's for sure. Like you said, with the flickering lights, so that was pretty neat. Like an 8 out of 10. It was a good episode. I liked it.
Okay. Last but not least, Mr. Lord Deadman. May I have your ratings, please?
Yes, I'm going to give this episode an 8.75 out of 10. I thought it was really strong. I admit that this episode was overwritten, right? Like somebody just said, I'm going to write the best episode that I possibly can. But that's kind of like how I enjoy my, speculative fiction and television stuff with action and sci-fi. So I'm kind of on this dude's side. I would have overwritten the crap out of it too. But I think it was overwritten, but done in a very elegant way. I thought it had great reveals in terms of the end. There was action set pieces that I thought were not bad, but not the greatest things you've ever seen in the MCU either. And again, I think the dynamic between Mobius and Loki, Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson continues to be a high point for the show. their exchanges, their motivations, those two are really putting in first class work there. And the drama that they bring, the elevator scene, sitting in the library, going through the files together, those guys have incredible chemistry, and their characters are coming out so clearly. You know, Mobius doing his bureaucratic thing, being a little snarky and overbearing when it comes to Loki, and Loki sort of hiding his insecurities behind this snide and sort of cunning attitude of his. They're playing on multiple levels, kind of like WandaVision did with the sitcom portrayal, and then the actual primary character portrayals that they had to do right beneath them. And I think Loki's working on a similar level. So solid 8.75. They lose a few points for some places where I started to drift in the salad metaphor. The Renaissance kind of tent scene seemed a little bit confusing and not poorly shot, but just, you know, not up to the master level that we'd seen in WandaVision and The Falcon and the Snowman. So 8.75 is my grade.
Falcon and the Snowman, that was a movie. But
you know what?
I forgive you.
You know, and I said that because it's next up on my 80s on my 80s crime movie watches, The Falcon and the Snowman. So
yeah,
thinking ahead there.
Well, there was a snowman, White Vision. Anyway, personally, and I'm gonna shock you guys now, I rate this a 5 out of 10. I was not impressed.
Oh wow!
And if this continues, for me, this will be the worst Marvel Studios has done.
Overreaction Saturday. What's going on?
No, this has nothing to do with overreaction, but I really didn't like it. And there's a candidate for being last on my list in my MCU ranking, being even below Thor: The Dark World, which I actually like. But actually, Loki episode 2, I absolutely did not like. So
First Wednesdays gets attacked. Odin's Day.
I'm sorry, but I rated this episode a 5 out of 10, and I hope it will improve in the next 4 episodes.
Well, I think they've got some time to turn it around.
And I let you, and I'll let you process that for a while. But we are going to talk now. We're going to move on to our spoiler section, our theory section, I should say, and it's called Cannon Fodder.
Cannon Fodder.
And the first theory I want to discuss with you guys is one that actually has been discussed on the board at length already, but I spotted it already earlier before you guys started talking about it, and I put it on my list. I moved it up to number 1 so I can get it out of the way. And the first theory I have in our section called Cannon Fodder is that Lady Loki is actually Sylvie Lushton, aka Enchantress. Well, buy, sell, or hold. And I'm gonna start with Mr. Lord Deathman.
Oh, I'm a firm sell on this one. I don't believe that the Lady Loki we saw at the end of episode 2 is the Enchantress. Any iteration of her. I think what the writers are doing are just cherry picking some certain aspects from different characters throughout the Loki and Thor mythology to put together a composite for the show. I don't want to run amok. You know, there's a part of me that really would love it if she was Enchantress, either Amora or Sylvie. But looking at what they've done in the past with these series is they really tried to use the most simplest, you know, versions of the source material that they can. So their whole thing is not to overcomplicate things. And especially when you're dealing with Loki, which has some very complicated ideas around time travel and the multiverse, I don't know that they would sort of, you know, add in, well, here's another character on top of your character because we heard you like characters. But in any event, I'm selling on it. But I want to say, though, I would be pleasantly surprised if that is Enchantress and, you know, we're into some kind of she's a henchman of the Loki that we haven't seen or something like that. But I think a lot of the theories that the folks have brought up online and on Twitter can easily be explained. I mean, Loki is a guy's name. So if it's another universe and you have a daughter, if Laufey's son has a daughter, I doubt you'd want to name that person Loki unless you just really wanted a boy. And maybe that's why she's all pissed off, right? Because she had to shape shift and sort of act like a guy this whole time, or whatever. But I do think that the counterpart to Loki could legitimately have a name like Sylvie. Sounds like Loki, same amount of syllables, but and still be sort of the same character, but a variant from a different universe. The power set in terms of possession is something you've seen Loki do in the comic books with regards to possessing other Asgardians. So not too far afield to believe that this Loki, just has that. This female Loki has this possession ability. So that's a sell for me.
Yeah, but you would love to buy it if you could.
Yeah. If the margins were cleaner, I'd buy.
Okay, Taylor, buy, sell, or hold on Lady Loki actually being Enchantress?
I think Lord Deathman's right, at least on the most of what he said. I'm familiar with Enchantress in the comics, but I'm not deeply familiar with it. I don't know all of her backstory and all of her origin story and all of that. But I will sell. I don't think it's her in this case.
Okay, Biz, buy, hold, or sell?
I'm going to hold. I mean, I guess it makes sense that she'll just turn out to be a variant and not Enchantress, but I'm holding out a candle for Enchantress, so that's why it's a hold. Because I want to see that character.
Me too, man. Me too.
Okay. Well, the fandom is convinced the Lady Loki will turn out to be Enchantress, from what I've been reading, and our panel has not fully bought this. Maybe our last member does. Mr. R. Stanton, is this a buy, sell, or hold for you? Lady Loki is actually Enchantress.
I'm going to be Mr. Gullible this year, and I think I've bought everything. So I will buy this, but in the sense that these are kind of an amalgamation of characters. Now I've softened my stance a bit since I was posting on the board, and in large part due to Lord Deathman here. Presenting a very reasonable take. I think he's right in the sense that they're not going to probably go to the extent I'm about to unfold here, but I think it's a bit of amalgamation, probably similar to how Ego was the gardener. I love that example. Or Hela also had a lot of elements of Gore, who is actually going to end up being in Thor 4. But they've done this with a lot of characters where they've combined them. So I see that happening easily. First of all, she looks very much more similar to Enchantress than she does Lady Loki. They've given her the name of this second Enchantress. So I'm leaning towards that, at least for now. And there were a number of things that made me think that. First of all, I kind of came to this independently. I haven't been reading a lot of boards, so I came to this idea sort of on my own, just thinking about, all right, why introduce this mind control ability? Why be able to possess people? Like, why show specifically that she was from the future? Remember, they found that spear and they dated it to I don't know, 2200 or 2300 or something like that. So she's from the future. She's got this mind-controlled ability, and I started thinking, okay, it's after Ragnarok, and the big story with after Ragnarok is that a lot of these characters in Norse mythology are reborn. So maybe she is some sort of reborn Loki in some sort of way. And I even thought maybe he literally mind transferred into her at that point. Probably not. That's probably where it gets a little convoluted. But I did think she could perhaps be an older main timeline version of Loki, and that's how she knows who this is. And I think another sign of that is when she said, if anybody's anybody, you're me, or something similar to that. So her being him, literally 300 years older, kind of ties together pretty neatly for me. So I'll buy this as an amalgamation sort of version of Enchantress and Lady Loki at the same time.
Well, the fandom is relieved. At least one member of the panel has bought this theory. Well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the next 4 episodes. Moving on to our second theory, and I'm going to go to Biz for this one first. And that theory is that Mobius is actually another Loki variant. I should say. Mobius is another Loki variant. What did you think? Do you think buy, sell, or hold?
I'm gonna sell that. Yeah, I don't see that happening at all.
Well,
Yeah.
this theory is based on the conversation that Ravonna Renslayer and Mobius have in this second episode on the couch when they are discussing the character of Loki, and they heavily hint at the fact that Mobius is basically has the same characteristics. It reminds them of someone they know. So that's why the fandom came up with this theory. So I give you one more chance. Mobius is maybe a Loki variant.
No, I'm gonna kick that away.
Okay. I gave you a chance.
No.
I gave you a chance. Don't come crying to me later. Arch, what do you think?
No, I think it's a fun one, but I am going to sell it. We actually had this conversation with me and Max off the board, where it would be funny since Loki wants to take over the TVA, or at least that's a thrown around goal in how serious he is about that. But that if everybody at the TVA was a Loki variant already, but I don't think this is happening, but it is kind of a funny idea. So
Okay.
sell it is.
Sell it is. Lord Deathman.
I'm going to have to get on the sell train with this one too. This is a lot of fun. I saw an interesting write-up of it on Twitter across like 4 tweets, and I was like, I wish this guy had been in the writer's room because he's got some imagination. Not to say that the writers on the show don't, but he almost had me. I was like, maybe Mobius is a variant. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to sell.
Well, last but not least, but I think I know his answer to this, but I will ask him anyway. Buy, hold, or sell. Mobius is actually another Loki variant.
Sell, and I'll sell it cheap.
Okay. So nobody's buying this theory. Sorry, fans. The panel is not impressed by this theory. Well, maybe the last theory I saw online on Twitter. Maybe a buy, but we'll have to wait and see. The timekeepers are a bit mysterious, and there are some fans that are speculating that the timekeepers are actually a council of Lokis. Arch, what do you think? Buy, sell, or hold?
I love this one too, but I'm gonna sell it. It's for the same reason of the TVA. Like, I think it'd be hilarious if, again, Loki is saying that, joking that he wants to take over them, and he's actually already in charge of them in a way. I almost want to buy it. I almost want to buy that the main Loki variant that he runs into is like one of the Time Lords. It's so tempting, but I will sell it.
Lord Deathman.
I'm also selling. There is something going on with the Time Lords, that's for sure. I think it might be as straightforward as that there are no Time Lords, and that's kind of like the big myth or mystery. I'm not ready to go with Kang all along just yet, or Loki all along. So you would have had me holding on this if you said that the Time Lords were a cross-time council of Kang, but a cross-time council of Loki. I don't think that you could get 2 Lokis that cooperate with each other, as evidenced by our last episode, let alone an entire council of them. So this is a sell for me.
Taylor. Buy, sell, or hold. The timekeepers are actually a council of Lokis.
That doesn't make sense. I'll sell.
Sell.
Yeah.
You're not in a buying mood today.
No, I'm not in a buying mood at all today. No, I'm only gonna sell that. Again, it makes no sense.
We're in a recession.
If they were a council of Lokis, they wouldn't be doing what the TVA does.
Right.
Good point. Biz, last but not least. Buy, sell, or hold?
Yeah, definitely sell. It just I understand see it happening. It's just too like wacky and bizarre for that to happen. Like, I mean, like, fair enough. Like, it is a little bit bizarre, but that's just like too bizarre for this show. Like, for Marvel in general, it's like no, the complete sell.
Okay. Well, that closes our section called Canon Fodder. Is there anything anyone would like to add to this review? please show your show of hands. No. Okay. Then, Taylor, you caught me at the last moment.
Yes, 5 out of 10. Really?
Yes, 5 out of 10. I really did not like it. There are aspects I like, little scenes I like, but overall, to me, it's very disappointing. Arch?
Yeah, just as someone who started into a metaphor and realized it wasn't working out, I like this sound thing. So, just wanted to say that.
What?
Lord Deathman?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I really hope that this show does lead into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, just because it has so much to do with the multiverse. So they've got me, it's like you had me from Hello with Loki episode 1. If this really does happen by the end of it, yeah, I can't wait to see what the fan theories are like after episode 3. And I think this is going to be the most theoried series of all the Marvel series, even surpassing the Mephisto madness of WandaVision.
Yeah, I did not bring Mephisto up because, that would be too easy. Huh? So, well, this will conclude our review for episode 2 of Loki. Before we finish, I would like to ask you to hit the subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube again, or follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, and absolutely join our forum on Sakar. That way you will never have to miss us, and we won't have to miss you. Thank you, and see you next week for our review of episode 3. Bye.